It's interesting how, you know, a lot of Cubans, as you and your family, you know, have moved here, you know, left in 59 just before, you know, Castro took over. But Cubans love to fish. It's amazing. Wherever you go, Cubans are fishing. And they know how to get it done.
They know how to get it done. They could do it with a hand line or a spinning rod.
Yeah, the Cuban
and
yo-yo.
even a fly rod,
yeah.
you know.
Well, have you ever caught any big fish with a yo-yo?
Yeah, I've caught big snappers and groupers and stuff like that, but I've never caught marlin or wahoo or anything like that.
And some of those guys did
catch
marlin with
my dad
a yo-yo?
used to wire line. I think they wire line a lot with their hands to catch wahoo in the wintertime. And I know they caught a lot of big wahoo doing that. But yeah, man.
Because I remember Borski was trying to catch big tarpon with a Cuban yo-yo.
Man,
huh?
That'd be brutal.
Wouldn't it be fun?
That would be crazy brutal.
I've got such bad shoulders, my arms would just leave my body. Tell me about your growing up in Cuba.
Well,
you know,
I was born here. My dad and my mom. Well, my mom left in 1959 from Cuba. My dad stayed behind.
That's right.
Right. And we had Dad had two girls that were born there, Irene and Georgina, two of my sisters. So they left and they came to Miami. And my dad kind of stayed behind trying to keep things afloat,
right.
Business afloat that my grandfather had.
And what kind of business was that?
It was a Chrysler Corporation where they sold cars, and it was pretty big. And my grandfather had to leave. They were looking for him for some reason. Somebody said something bad about him, and he was worried about him getting caught up with all the people that they were coming after at the beginning of the revolution.
Right.
You know, if you had money, you
were
suspect.
Yeah.
You know, you were suspect right away.
But didn't you mention at one point he might have been working with the CIA or something?
So what happened was when my mom came to Miami and my dad was there working, trying to keep things afloat, he was also working for the CIA and the Cubans that were fighting against Castro at the time. So he would smuggle out Cubans that were in trouble on the island on a boat. And he would meet the Americans, whoever was his contacts. Mm-hmm. He would take them out and hand them over to the Americans, whoever picking them up. And he would bring back ammunition. He would bring back ammunition on the boat. So the guerrillas would have them in Cuba, the people that were fighting against Castro. So he did that for, I think, 14 months or something like that, till they finally, Castro and whatever secret police they had finally found out that they were doing this. And they came after him one night, in the middle of the night, but he already had wind that they were looking for him. He ran down to where he kept his boat, him and another guy, and they ran out of the river. I don't know the name of the river. It was somewhere in Havana. And they got shot up. I mean, they hit them up pretty good, but they didn't hurt the motors. I think it had two motors, the boat he was on. And
Did anybody get hurt?
Nobody got hurt.
Just the boat had holes in it.
Just the boat got a little dinged up. They came out of Havana, and instead of him going straight south, he knew that they would be out there waiting for him. He turned, and he went right up the coastline all the way to the western tip of Cuba, and then cut across. And he made it to Sandy Key Light off of Key West, till finally their motors gave out, and some fishermen found him there and towed him into Key West.
It's amazing how many fishermen we have in this area, South Florida, fly fishermen that had families that got out of there in '59.
Right.
Originally with Chico Fernandez,
right.
Joe Rodriguez,
right.
Who fishes all the tournaments up
right.
there. We're talking about fishing tournaments. Do you remember your dad teaching you how to fish around here?
You know what? Absolutely. He would carry me. We would go out in front of Nixon's house in Miami.
Right.
and we would fish for trout with popping corks.
Wow.
And I remember that vividly. We would drift right out on those grass flats right there, catch big old giant trout, and I loved that to death. And then from that point on, he would go everywhere. We'd go to Flamingo. We would go to Elliott Key. He'd take me everywhere. We'd go to Bimini, on a 20-foot sea craft with the family, and we would marlin fish. I mean, you name it.
He did it.
He did it.
And he did it in Cuba also?
He did it in Cuba. He had a Cubavitch, which is a knockoff from a Rivovitch. What happened is the Americans came down. The Americans came down to fish for white marlin, and the Cubans one night took one of the boats, put it on dry dock, took the dimensions on it, and they built a Cubavitch. There's still some around today. So he had a 34 Cubavitch that he would white marlin fish out of. That's what he loved. That was his passion. With light tackle,
right.
12-pound 20 spinning rod. So he did a lot of that.
So your DNA comes from a very deep fishing background.
DNA is heavy. My sisters all fish hard. My kid fishes. I mean, it's in the blood.
Did your father ever speak about Hemingway and his relationship with fishing in Cuba?
A little bit. Hemingway kept his boat close to Dad's boat at the Biltmore. I think the name of it was the Marina. But he didn't really elaborate too much on that.
Right.
But he knew him. He would see him there. But I don't think he ever got to fish with him or anything like that.
Have you ever been back and fished Cuba?
I went in 1996. Yep. I took a boat over from Marathon, from here, 46-foot Torres, me and another guy. And we went there, but we didn't fish. We went there for a couple weeks just to cruise around and party, and it was a wonderful place.
It's we were there, Nikki and I were there a while back, and I couldn't believe how it's frozen in time.
Oh, yeah.
All the infrastructure and the cars.
Right.
It's terrible to see what communism and Castro has done. It's just halted growth.
Yep, halted growth. But the one good thing it did, and I hate saying it because my dad would probably kill me, is that, the reefs, a lot of the reefs, especially on the South Coast, have held up because they haven't been exposed to a lot of things that they might have if it had blown out of proportion.
Sure.
But
I find it very compelling to understand what BTT has done in Cuba, where they've stopped the netting for the bonefish.
Right.
And they're speaking now that we're getting a lot of the larvae from the bonefish in Cuba, where before the Cubans used to eat bonefish. Right. Is that true?
Well, from what I understand,
from what they say, it is.
Yeah, from what I understand, that is true.
Mm-hmm.
I think the bigger problem there, though, is this wasn't that they were eating it. I think the Russians were there at a high scale, getting them from the Cubans to net. They were netting them up and using them for some kind of fertilizer or something.
So they're exporting all the fish.
Yeah, so that's what I really think hurt the bonefish the most, even though a lot of netting does occur there. I don't know if it still does or not. But
I think that they've stopped all the netting, and that's why, hypothetically, we're seeing a resurgence in bonefish, especially in Key West.
Right.
What kind of bonefishing have you seen around here?
Well,
I mean, obviously it dropped off.
Yeah.
Are you seeing it come back at all?
It's come back, Andy, but it's come back differently. Fish are deeper, at least in the areas that I fish, around the contents and west and a little east. They like the higher tides. They don't tail.
Do they get up on the flats on a higher tide?
Yeah, they get up on the flats.
And mud? They mud?
They mud a little bit. Some places they mud, but primarily they're around the smaller mangroves on harder bottom. Mm-hmm. I've noticed they're on harder bottoms instead of grass bottoms, even though down in Key West, that's all grass, and there's a lot of bonefish down there. But they definitely don't tail the way they used to. You got to fish for them differently.
Right.
Deep.
It's harder.
It's just harder.
Yeah.
It's harder. It's not like it was before.
I got to go back and talk about your dad because Nikki and I used to fish out there, in the green holes of Jack Tar in bad weather, and your dad would come right down the line in his panga, throw his anchor out in front of us.
Right.
It was just awesome.
Yeah.
A lot of people would yell at him. It was like he was deaf.
Right.
He knew where he was going to go.
And he would come in all the time and he'd say, man, I don't know why they're yelling at me. I go, Dad, those guys are out there way before you. You get out there, throw the anchor 50 yards in front of them and think it's okay. He's like, well, damn, I'm out there every day too. And I think I'm far enough from them, but I'm like, Dad, if you're getting yelled at, you're doing something wrong. You know what I mean?
I think that's what's happening to me.
Right.
Does he catch any fish?
He does off the dock now,
He catches tarpon with his
when we're gutting fish out here in the tarpon, getting the canal, he's out there hooking fish. It's like
every night. 95 years old?
Oh, my God, 95, barefooted, no shirt, pair of shorts.
Oh, that's awesome. Good for him.
So it's good.
Good. I want to get back to you and your reputation, in the fly fishing world.
Yeah.
A lot of our audience are, they're around the world, and they really focus in a lot of times, I think, on what we're doing in fly fishing down here in the Keys. Mm-hmm. And Albert Ponzoa is a great name in fly fishing. Mm-hmm. You have got such great respect from everybody as being one of the greatest anglers, commercial fishermen. Mm-hmm. Possibly very few people know about the ecosystem down here as far as the biomass of fish than you. So it's May 10th. No, it's the 11th.
Right.
Pika Tarpon season.
Right.
What are you seeing out there right now? And we'll talk about the biomass here in a little bit too, but I want to hear about your daily exposure to tarpon.
Well, what I'm seeing now is, we've already been a full 30 days of tarpon, okay, because they started April 1st. Usually I would never, we would start fishing the ocean 15th, 18th, sometimes even later, 20th of April. So they've come late. They've come early, okay? So we've already got 40 days of fishing them already.
Almost a full season.
It's almost a full season. So I'm getting a little nervous as to what my June is going to look like. Okay, so that's what I'm nervous about. Now, as far as the fish go, there's been a fair number of tarpon on the ocean side from what I see. Nothing less or nothing more than, I would say it's been better this year than last year, mm-hmm. which I haven't been able to say for a long time. Okay.
Right.
The weather's been pretty good, I think. We've had some days with some west wind, which is poison.
They don't bite?
They don't bite.
They swim, but they don't bite?
They swim, they don't bite, and you can't get on them because they're going east and west, and you try to pull to get a good angle. You can't get a good angle. You get one shot, and they're gone. At least in the areas that we fish.
Why does a west wind affect these fish like that?
The hell if I know. I don't know, Andy.
But it's consistently a west wind makes these fish act like that.
If it's out of the west, and there's
stay home and rest. The offshore guys, if it's out of the west, stay home and rest.
It
right?
sucks, man. It sucks, and you don't catch anything.
What about the north wind?
North wind is just as bad because it rolls you over the top of the fish. If you're poling for fish, a north wind will take you over the fish. So you get one shot and the wind takes you over them and you're done. If you're staked out, you could fish them. But usually I pole and you only get one throw before the wind throws you over the fish and you're done.
And you're done.
So anything from that quadrant, when it goes southwest to north, I'm screwed. Mm-hmm. Period. End of story. If it's 5 days of it, I know 5 days it's going to be bad.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people have been trying to get you to fish the tournaments.
It just hasn't played out for me, Andy.
In what way? They haven't offered you enough money yet?
No.
What's going to make that work? I got a young gun right there.
It just, at this point.
It doesn't mean that much to you, obviously.
Well,
to win a big tournament.
I don't have the same gas in my tank now than I did when I was 25.
I hear you.
And you guys that are fishing that tournament are for real. Okay, they don't play.
Right.
Okay, so I know I wouldn't have a chance because I just don't have that in me to go that extra yard that I got to go. If I got to run another 45 minutes, I wouldn't have thought about it, when I was 25.
Did you ever think about fishing those tournaments when you were younger?
You know what? I really didn't because I was too busy.
Doing your thing.
Yeah, doing my thing and trying to figure out the fishery. I mean, it hasn't been easy. It's difficult. I learn something every day. And for me, tarpon fishing has been, at least ocean tarpon fishing, has been one of the hardest things for me to learn. Because you gotta know, back in the day when I started, guys would tell me, like Harry and Steve and Dale and all those guys, they don't bite in the ocean. I mean, we all knew that. They didn't bite in the ocean.
You changed that game.
Well, at least where I fish, yeah. I mean, I thought, holy shit, they don't bite. I mean, you see 2,500 tarpon in a day, you might catch one if you're lucky, and you're right in them, you're doing everything right, and you're thinking, what the hell's going on here?
So what's the key?
Well, I mean,
what'd you figure out?
It was a progression of things, Andy. It was a progression getting to it, but I learned early on not to strip the fly like I was told I needed to strip it, like everybody did it, strip. The moment I figured out to slow things down a little bit, I started getting a little success. And
were you double hand stripping at the time or just slowing everything down?
I thought that double hand stripping was a bunch of malarkey. I thought, oh my God, somebody's going to lose that rod. This is stupid, So it took me a while to go to two hands. Once I once I saw with my own eyes that, hey, this really works. It really works. You don't make any mistakes because you can't. And you keep that fly coming steady. There's no jumping. Mm-hmm. The fly's not jumping. And I mean, I know there's plenty of guys out there that fish and they still jump their flies and they catch the hell out of them. But in the area that I'm fishing, they don't like that. You jump that fly, they will run the other way. Mm-hmm. Period.
One of the things that I noticed about jumping flies is Harry Spear, if I'd cast a little bit too far, lead him too far, he'd say, sweep the fly into position.
Right.
So you sweep that rod tip, and once you get in position, then you can start feeding the fish.
Right.
But I remember initially when I would try to get the fly in position,
yeah,
I'd strip it too aggressively,
yeah,
and they would jump out of their skins.
Yeah.
But you're fishing mostly the worm?
Well, at this point on the ocean, yeah.
How about in April when there's no moon tide?
In April, well, if I'm on the ocean, well, it depends on where you're fishing, right? Once they move down in the neck of the woods where I fish around Sunshine and that, I use primarily worm flies, okay? But early on, like in March and April, if I'm fishing up at Long Key or somewhere up that way, I use either a muddler or something that floats, keeps up high in the water column. But down here this time of year, I primarily use a worm fly. Mm-hmm. It works.
Here's one of the things that I notice about the double hand strip. I think that a lot of people around the world have an issue with two things. They throw the fly, get it in position, they start stripping way too aggressively. And right away, you're pulling that fly out of that fish's face.
Right.
But the double hand strip, too, you could still do that with two hands really fast. But for the most part, you're going to be a little bit more of a doodle, as they call it now.
Right.
But also, too, when the fish bites it, I used to yank that fly right out of their mouth with my right hand when I'm single hand stripping.
Right.
Now, you can do that with two hands, but I'm not going to tell anybody how it's done because I don't want to put the voodoo in your heads.
Right.
But I've refined that for sure. We were talking earlier about, the biomass.
Yeah.
And Nikki and I fish, a little bit closer to Key West, and I've always noticed that the fish come there a little bit later and leave a little bit earlier than the fish in the upper Keys,
right.
Isla Morada.
Right.
And the bridges in Islamorada, they go out of one bridge, come in the next. So that's their zip code,
Right.
long key and all that.
Right.
But I've noticed, over the years, a big decline in fish.
Right.
And we've spoken, and I know with Dustin Huff and good friends of yours, the biomass is not there.
Right.
Tell us what you've seen.
Well, there was one particular area that we used to fish. It's bank. It's out to the north of Big Pine. It's the furthest bank out. And that was the spot to go when the weather got warm in February, because that's where the big migration of fish would come in. Big. Miles of tarpon.
Thousands of fish.
Thousands of fish. And they would come in there and they would spread out. They'd go all the way from bank, all the way to bank, and back into, and it was a massive amount of fish. It fed that whole area in there, okay? And around the time of the freeze, around the oil spill, which was 2010, maybe a year or two before that, those fish disappeared. Okay, you didn't see them anymore. There was no more free jumping. You didn't see those big daisy chaining schools out there or them laying out there. Now, I got to be honest, there used to be a lot of mullet out there. The mullet muds used to be all over, and they would lay in that mullet mud. You just pull in the mud, and they'd be laying up, and you'd cast to them and catch them that way. Those mullet are gone, okay, out of that particular area. Out of that area, those mullet are gone. The tarpon are gone.
You've always said, I mean, in the fishing world, they've always said you find the bait, you're going to find the fish.
Yep, that's true.
But what happened to the mullet?
I don't know. I don't know what happened to the mullet, but they're not out there anymore. You don't see any more muds out there. But what's kind of funny is those fish, I think the way it works is that big old biomass went from sideboard bank all the way to the Marquesas, okay? And it fed that whole area. All those channels would fill up at the same time. Sawyer, Harbor Key, Jack Channel, Pearl Basin, all that used to fill in at the same time. So It was all, it wasn't like it was one body of fish that would move from here to there to the other place. No, it was a mass of fish that would come in out of the Gulf and would lay in these spots. And we would follow them all the way in. I would follow them all the way to the innards, to all those little keys inside, and they would go right to the bridge. They'd go to Moser's Channel or Knight's Key Channel or Bay of Honda Channel, and that's where they would get, and they would mix with the other tarpon that were coming from the other direction. Now what you got is just residential fish that when the weather gets good, they show up. And you go to one spot and there's 30. Go to another spot, there's 15. You go to another spot, you might see 50, okay? But that's what you see. You don't see any more free jumpers. You don't see any big schools. You don't see any of that. So I don't know where they went. Mm-hmm. And the commercial fishermen that are out in the Gulf, they haven't seen, they've seen some dead tarpon, but...
What's that from, you think?
Well, who knows, red tides or whatever, but it's not like they're coming back going...
And they're not even seeing thousands of fish dead.
If they see 2, it's a lot, or 5. So I haven't heard from any one person say, hey, we got a big fish kill. We got a problem with tarpon are all dead. I haven't seen that. I haven't heard that.
Right.
So where they could have gone, I don't know, but I could tell you for a fact they're gone. And that's what fed the whole lower keys, middle keys, all those keys down that way, they're history.
Interesting.
So what we got now is just
resident fish.
We're scab fishing, you know what I mean? And what happens is if too many boats are fishing 30 fish every day, you're not going to do very good.
Right. Right.
So, that's where we're at.
Mm-hmm. I used to see them, up by Ponce, come in. Go offshore.
Yeah.
It's amazing days out there. You jump hook 35 and catch 16.
Right.
I miss those days.
Well, what I could tell you is this winter was really good up there. You know, not at Ponce, but up in that area, in the Cape area. I thought there was a lot of tarpon around.
They just didn't come all the way down.
I don't know where they went, but all I know is March and April was very good. But I know those fish from Big Pine of the Marquesas are missing, and I'm worried about that. You know?
Right. Well, you have seen a lot more than most people because you're also a commercial fisherman.
Right.
Tell me about that life in the Gulf, commercial fishing.
Well, it goes way back, you know.
To your family.
Yeah, like when I was 16, 17, 18, we always...
Who is we? Who taught you?
Well, it would be me and a couple of my buddies, but we would catch lobsters and sell them, and we did a lot of snapper fishing out here at Sombrero Light. We do that all summer and do very good. I mean, enough to make enough money that you didn't have to have a job, you know, in the wintertime, you know, when you were in school. So, I mean, it started like that, and I've always kept a little bit of that going. I mean, it's not hardcore 100% commercial, but it's more of a, you know, when we're not charter fishing, we're making money somehow, whether we're selling bait or we're selling kingfish or we're selling lobster or snapper, we're doing it.
You're a fisherman.
Yeah, because it's
inside
expensive.
and out.
It's expensive to live here, man, and you gotta, you know, you gotta make it happen if you're not, you know, if you're not fishing.
Do you fish the ocean much offshore?
I don't much anymore. My son does all the time. He's out there 7 days a week.
But you go into the Gulf.
I go into the Gulf.
How far out do you go?
We go about 80 miles, 80, 90 miles king fishing. We go up towards Everglades City in December and January. And we fish some in the Tortugas for snapper and grouper.
How do you find these spots?
Well,
word of mouth?
Word of mouth, yeah. You're friends with a lot of commercial guys, you know, that are out there doing it. And, you know, everybody talks, hey, they're in this area, they're in that area. And they're big schools, you know, they're giant schools. And an airplane flies also when they're netting them. So word gets around where they're at. Right. And we get in on the action and, you know.
Tell me about a day of king fishing.
Buddy, a day of king fishing, you will sleep 3 days for every 1 day of king fishing you do. It's that hard on you, okay? You're dropping down jigs, and these fish will kick your ass. King mackerel is a hard fighting fish.
And how far you drop in? How deep of
water?
We're
in 50 foot.
50 feet.
We're in 50 foot. But the hardest part of king fishing is when you get to the dock.
Oh, you gotta clean them.
And you got 1,400 pounds or 1,250 pounds of kingfish that you got to put in trash cans.
Oh my Lord!
To put in the truck. To send up to Miami.
So you don't have anybody, anybody waiting with sharp knives?
No, man, no. I mean, the easiest part of kingfishing is fishing for them. It's when you get back to the dock.
And you're catching 120 kingfish a day.
120 kingfish. Try unloading
three guys.
3 guys. And you got to unload all that. It's not a lot of fun, buddy. That's where, you know, you think about it and you go, damn. You know, you really got to be in it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it, you know?
That's why you don't want to fish tarpon tournaments. You're tired from kingfishing.
You know? So.
What, how old are you now?
I am 61.
Do you fish any new people every year?
I don't.
What's your clientele look like?
Most of them are...
Neil Rogers, the great photographer.
Yeah, they're about 75, you know, Neil. I fish Neil.
You have 75 clients you fish with?
No. They're 75 years old or more.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying?
They're my age.
Yeah, I mean, they're getting there. And
that's nice because they don't want to fish so long and
hard.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true. I get in a little earlier than I did before. But I don't have that many clients. I'd say I have maybe 15 or so, you know, that keep me busy enough to make a living at it.
And when's your season start and begin? 1st of April
February
for tarpon?
1st. I start fishing February 1st. I fish till July 1st.
For tarpon?
Pretty much for tarpon and whatever's around
right
at the time.
Because I see these photographs of the permit that you've caught with Neil Rogers.
Yeah, well, we've done a lot of good fishing together.
How often? So tell me about your permit fishing around here.
Well, the permit fishing, we do most of it out in Big. I fish a lot around Big Pine and that. So, you know, it's been kind of weak the last couple of years, to be honest with you. For what reason, I really don't know. But, you know, it just hasn't been as good as it.
Do you like permit fishing?
Not really.
You like to be rewarded.
Give me a crab at the end. And even with the crab, they're starting to piss me off because they don't want to eat a crab sometimes, you know?
Oh, that is hilarious.
So, yeah, I would say permit is my least, you know, funnest fish to go after.
Right.
I love to tarpon fish, and I love to bonefish. I don't like the way I have to fish for them anymore. It's not, you know, I can't go after tailors anymore, you know.
But you could still get them.
I could still get them, but,
yeah,
you know, it's not the same,
yeah.
You know.
What do you think about the dynamics of the number of guides around the Lower Keys? How have you been able to keep your fishery to yourself? Because I know where you fish, and you fish alone.
Well,
and you have Rob. Okay. I think Scott Collins a little bit.
Yeah,
you and
Scott and Rich. There's some more boats that are fishing around, but I got to start out by saying that at one time, Andy, and I might have some video of it, there used to be 15 boats on top of us fishing there, okay, every day.
Did you start packing?
It wasn't good.
Just start showing?
And let me tell you, there was a lot of guys with electric motors, and, you know, I had to go through all that, you know.
But tell me the process. How'd you?
Well, I mean, the way it, you know, in the heyday of the thing, you know, big schools would be coming all over the place, and people would see them, you know, and they'd go out there and try to catch them, you know. But they're not easy to catch, and we didn't know how to catch them. Nobody knew how to catch them. We get lucky every now and again to catch them. So the 15 boats that used to be out there, they'd get tired of not catching. And one by one, go somewhere else where they could catch them, you know? And the guys that stayed behind, sucking it up, dying a horrible, miserable death, finally got a little nudge on it and started figuring it out a little bit, you know? And I think over time, people just quit going, you know, and we've been able to be left alone pretty much because of that, you know. And it's a whole different deal, Andy. I mean, you can't stake up. There's no shooting.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's harder. You sit for endless amount of hours. It's not like you're getting shots and you got to be paying attention all the time.
It's not like up in Islamorad on the beach.
Yeah, at least you're getting shots and you got to be ready and you're involved, you know. So you got to train your people up that way too. So that comes with having the right people on the boat that are willing to fish that way.
So when you have 75-year-old guys, you got to wake them up
asleep,
from a nap.
Dude, they're asleep. Either they're asleep or I'm asleep, you know. So so that's pretty much the progression of things.
Right.
And, you know, there's a lot of skiffs now that are fishing to the west, which, you know, like down in the Sunshine area, which I fish a lot.
Right.
And there's a lot of guys fishing there now.
I see that. It's scary.
Yeah.
Well, I wrote an article last year for Till Magazine, and I can't remember the title. I should, but I have dementia. But it was basically how you guys started, you know, you guys invented and refined the worm and the worm fishing and the fuchsia worm.
Well, I can't take credit for that.
But you were part of it.
I was part. Well, I could tell you for sure I was part of it.
Right.
Okay. But I got that fly from Neil Light. Okay. That guy threw it in my boat. He gave me 2 of them. But he didn't tell me anything.
But wasn't he a steelhead fisherman from California? He tied up this fly, this worm fly, with a fuchsia rabbit. He threw it in your boat or something, right?
Yep. We're fishing off of Bay of Honda Beach, and he came over to me and said, "Albert, try this." Guy's a great fisherman, Neil.
Did he already know the effect of that fuchsia fly?
I don't think so. I think he was catching them at the bridge, you know, worm fishing or something, but I don't think he realized how good. I know later on he did, because we would talk. And, you know, that opened up the game right there from that point on.
It changed tarpon fishing for the rest of time.
Fishing. From that point on, it was okay. It wasn't a matter of, can I get them to bite? You knew you were going to get them to bite. You just had to make the right cast.
Right.
You could never do that before.
No.
Forget about it.
It was a game changer right now. So tell me about the progression of once that worm got into your hands, and how did it get to DeLue and Scott Collins' hands? And then they started winning all the tournaments. They won all 3 in the same year with the worm fly, double hand stripping.
Yep. So when Neil gives me that fly, it was, I want to say it was late May. It was during the worms. And we were using a fly, a muddler, that Randy Brown gave me. Okay, he showed me this fly.
Just
it was
like a
mouse
trout
fly.
Oh,
it was a mouse fly.
Okay.
And he showed me how to tie it.
Did it have a tail?
No, it didn't have a tail.
Just a lot of deer hair?
It did deer hair and some feathers. But that's what we were using.
On the surface, floating.
Pretty much, it sank a little bit, but it's suspended. So it would stay in that window for a long time. The traditional fly sank. So you got to be pulling them all the time to stay, you know, where the fish are.
Right.
You know, so that...
So if you didn't have a fly that would stay with the fish in that level,
it would be in the
water
zone
column
all the time, yeah. And we did good with that muddler. That was a great fly that Randy gave me. But when Neil gave me that fly and I tied it on, and I see a pack coming, and I was fishing with Billy Lathrop. He makes a cast. It wasn't that great. It was shitty cast. And I was telling him, pick it up, make another cast. And when he starts pulling, 2 fish just break out and come after this fly and eats it. And we got this fish on. I go, holy shit. Okay. But I didn't know at that time that it was going to be that good. I mean, I just thought, okay, this is good. This fly's going to work, you know. It had a small hook. He had an Aki hook on there, and it was too small. I knew we were going to lose the fish, and we did. And we lost the fly, I think, but I had one more. And I didn't let Billy touch that fly. I got home that night, and I think I had to go down to Neil's and get some rabbit strip because I didn't have the right color. Okay, that fuchsia color. I don't remember, but I got my hands on some. And I tied up 24 of them, put them in a Ziploc bag, and I went back out the next day. Guess how many I had left when I came back in that next day? 0.
You lost all the flies.
Yep. So that's, to me, that was like, holy shit. And that took years and years and years, because we've been fishing that ocean forever and could never, ever
crack the code.
Ever. You know, kind of like permit fishing. You think you got it, you know, you got a fly that works okay, but you really don't have something that really, you know, okay, I'm going to kick some ass with the thing.
Right.
You know, and that thing was unbelievable.
So then how did that fly get to Collins and
well,
Dave DeLue?
You know, I gave the fly to a good friend of mine, Carl Wagner.
Yeah, it's a good story.
I told Carl, I go, Carl, do not give this fly to anybody. I said, keep it to yourself. Take it, but keep it to yourself. So he takes it. And he calls me up the next day. Holy shit, we're killing him. I keep calling him, we're killing him. I go, okay, good. Keep everything to yourself.
Don't tell anybody.
We'll be good. Let's try to keep this. Well, you know the rest is history, Andy. I mean, from there, I don't know the specifics of it.
But what I heard was that Carl had some other buddies that could no longer fish with him because he double booked or something, and they fished with Scott Collins.
That is right. Leonard Baum was the guy's name.
Yes. And they had one of these flies. They gave it to Scott Collins.
That's correct.
And Scott Collins started whacking all these fish. And Wagner called Collins and saying, what fly are you using? Something like that.
Right.
And he said something. And I think Carl said, "Fuck you."
That's how it went. That's how
And
it
then
went.
they fished the tournaments. He and Dave DeLue, double hand stripping the worm. They won all 3 tournaments that year.
Right.
Then right away, the rest of the tarpon tournament scene, all the guys, all the anglers, double hand stripping the worm.
Right.
And it's been that way
Since
then.
Right.
Very interesting.
Yep.
Why was it about the fuchsia that made these fish react like they did? And that fly no longer works as well.
Yeah, you're right. It no longer works. I mean, you could catch a fish here and there with it.
Right.
But, Andy, I think a lot of it had to do also with the way we were fishing them, too. It wasn't just the fly.
Right.
It was, getting it in
Putting
the
it in the right
place
spot and moving it.
And moving it right. So
Yes.
it was a lot to it.
Right,
There's
sure.
a lot to it other than the fly. But, that fly just, it looked good in the water, man. It looked good in the water. And they ate the shit out of it. I mean, big time.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? I don't know. I mean, I don't know how we better that fly. I don't know how.
If you fish anything else, you're going to go backwards.
You're going to go backwards.
Right.
So I kind of worry. I go, well, what are we going to tie next? I mean, where do we go from here?
Well, how do you feel about these fish are so old?
Yeah.
They see this every year.
Yeah.
These fish migrate here every year.
Yeah.
We've educated these fish. You've got to be technically almost perfect to catch fish now.
Absolutely.
I hate to say that because I don't want people to get discouraged.
No.
But the game has changed in that you've got to cast a certain way. You got to use, clear tips, long leaders.
Right.
Do you use an all clear fly line?
All clear. And I'm even carrying in my boat a 9-weight. So when it gets slick calm and I can't get near them, I use a 9-weight all clear line, long leader. And even with that, it's not easy. So,
It's very interesting how, that line landing on the water, they feel that displacement.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried the ghost tip where only you have 9 feet of a
Yeah,
clear tip and a
yeah.
15-foot leader?
Yep, Airflow made one that we used to use, but the line would fall apart. It was a great line. It was a colored line, but with a clear tip on the
I
end.
tell you what, that new Cortland is
Yep.
unbelievable. They changed the shooting head on it to connect to the clear tip. The old line worked, but it was really difficult to cast, but the new line is incredible.
Right.
You might want to try that.
Well, I have those.
Oh, you
That's
do?
what I'm using
You're
now.
using the new one?
That's what I'm using now.
The brand new one.
The only thing I find that I don't like about it is it tangles a little bit. Even if you keep it clean, it's a little problematic that way. But it's a great line. That's all I use.
So you use the Cortland all clear.
All the liquid series, I think it's called liquid crystal series.
Crystal clear, yeah.
Right.
So you don't use that clear tip then?
I don't use the clear tip.
Maybe that's my problem. My eyes have gone. I can't hear. I can't see. If I use the all clear fly, I don't see anything. I throw it out and everything's gone.
Well, the thing is, it's a pain in the ass. You can't see where your fly lands, right?
I mean, he can fish it.
Yeah,
He's
well,
awesome. He's young.
I mean, I have a hard time. I got to look when the guy's casting. I'm always looking to see the fly land.
Where it land.
And then I'm like, okay, you're good. But yeah, that's the problem with that clear line. You can't see where the hell it lands.
Not everybody can fish that line. Yeah.
Difficult.
Yeah.
Difficult, Andy. Difficult.
What would you like to add to this conversation?
Well, the one thing I'd like to add, be probably the shark problem at the bridges. And I've heard a lot of scuttlebutt about maybe restricting the guys fishing at the bridges because of predation. Okay? And I don't think it's a good idea to restrict the fishermen from fishing at the bridge because of predation. I think we need to go after the sharks, at the bridge. If you take 1 or 2 sharks and you kill them and I know it sounds terrible, okay, but it works. And if you hang them from the poles at the bridge, you'll have no predation problem. And therefore, the guys at the bridges that have been making their living there for a long, long time, and the young kids that are coming up that have to make their living at that
Sure.
at the bridge could still make their living there without worrying about being thrown out because of predation.
Right.
Okay. We know there's a problem. Okay. We know there's a predation problem.
Are you losing a lot of fish
I'm not losing any fish
to sharks?
fly fishing for sharks, but Andy, we really don't know that because you fight a fish
release
for
the fish.
30 minutes.
Yeah.
You let him go. You don't know if he's getting eaten 3 hours later at Bay of Honda or at
Right.
7 Mile or Long Key. We don't know. We
Right.
got some impact in it, I guarantee you.
Right.
You know, so I've heard a lot of talk, and it kind of has gotten me sideways a little bit.
What do you think about? I'm just throwing this out.
Okay.
It's not my suggestion to do this.
Right.
What do you think about the Palolo worms and how important it is for these tarpon to eat these worms during that worm tide?
Well, it's absolutely important for them to eat them.
Well, if that being the case, have you ever thought maybe we should close these areas like Bahia Honda for those 4 nights to all fishermen?
Andy, I don't know if that would make a difference.
Yeah.
If I thought it would make a difference, I would say yes. I don't know if you really.
These fish are going to be fine. They're going to go offshore and spawn. They're going to be fine.
Right. I can't. I'd hate to make a judgment like that because I don't know.
Here's the deal that I have. That I think all fly fishermen that really care should not fish over these fish at the bridges.
Okay.
You can find fish elsewhere.
Right.
But I just think personally, I'll never fish Bahia Honda during worm hatch. But you see these 60-some boats there
Right.
running on top of these fish's heads,
Right.
everywhere.
Right.
It just is not a good feel good thing to me.
Right. And I understand that point of view, but on the other side of that, it's exciting for somebody to come from Montana or Idaho or New York or New Jersey that's never fished or might have limited amount of
Exposure.
time on the water
Yeah.
and get exposed to something like that. Now, whether or not we could handle things better at that bridge, not run the fish over, not do a lot of things that shouldn't be done there, run over top of the schools with your motor on and stuff.
I say just be conscious.
Yeah, those things are definitely not good, but to ban something like that, you really got to think about what whether or not it's worth it to do that.
Let's go here for a second.
Okay.
We know that western dry rocks is where a lot of permits spawn.
Yep.
And BTT and all the conservation organizations close that for 4 months.
Okay.
Do you think that's a good idea? When you see these light tackle guys losing 50% of the fish they hook to sharks.
Again, I go back to, we know what the problem is predation. If you go there to western dry rocks and you take a couple of those sharks and you send them down to the bottom, I guarantee you're going to go 30 days without a problem. We know that. It works. And you wouldn't have taken a bunch of people that use that spot.
Right. To make their livelihood.
Pissed off. And now they got to go somewhere else and increase pressure in other places. So we really got to, going forward, we got to think about things like that. When we close areas out, you got to look at the overall, the end game, and I don't think by closing western dry rocks, I don't think it was a good thing. I think we could have taken care of that without having problems with predation.
Well, the only way you're taking care of it is like what you just suggested. You got to nuke a couple of sharks.
Right.
Well, here you have guys too. I was talking to Mike Criscola, who's on the board of the IGFA. We were speaking the other day, and all these guys offshore that are sailfishing are losing their fish to sharks too. I mean, it's a worldwide problem.
And it's everywhere, Andy. It's not just here. It's in the Bahamas. We go to the Bahamas every summer.
Right.
You can't get a tuna to the boat, man. You cannot get a tuna to the boat. You find yellowfin tunas and you get on them. The sharks hear the motors, and they are on you. They are on you. You get lucky to get a fish to the boat. Mm-hmm. And that's in the Bahamas. you know?
Well,
and when you're diving, you got to be watching your ass because they hear that spear go off, they're on you. Black tips are on you, you know? And it wasn't like that way back in the day.
right.
You know, it's lately, and it's
Well,
bad.
look, that's food for thought.
Yeah.
And it's food for, you know, everybody who has a chance to, you know, to voice Tallahassee,
Right.
the FWC, and maybe somewhere down the road there might be a way where we're not going to eliminate very many sharks, but we can figure out how to live together.
That would be great.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that would be really great if we could do that.
It'd be a home run.
And one more thing I'd like to add is we got too many guides fishing, too many fishing guides, I think. You know, you go to one flat, when you leave, there's another guy rotates behind you, another guy comes after you. Before you know it, you got 10 guys fishing the same flat every day. Okay, every day, from February to July. That's not good for the fishing. And it's the same thing with the recreational guys. We got too many recreational guys using it also. So there's going to come a time where we're going to have to face that and come to some kind of program where, you know, you don't get that kind of impact. And, you know, nobody likes regulations. So I don't like them.
How do you foresee that coming to fruition and making it work?
Well, I think the way they should do it is, you know, if you do it for a living and 50% of your income comes from fishing, you should be able to be part of the first group that could work.
Grandfathered in somehow.
Absolutely. If you were there and you could, and you do it for a living, you should be able to do it. Okay. But you got to show that you're, you know, by your taxes. That's how the commercial guys did it. The commercial fishermen, they've gotten rid of all the bucket fishermen doing it that way. You know, you got to show a certain number of money, a certain amount of money that you sell every year. And, you know, over time, it's gotten rid of all the bucket fishermen and all that's left.
What's a bucket fisherman?
Well, bucket fisherman is a guy that would come in with a bucket full of fish at the end of the day and sell it at the market to cover his gas, okay, or to cover his cost. They did away with that, you know, because they just wanted fishermen, you know, commercial guys that were actually going to catch fish, to sell fish, to put food on the table. That's what they want. That's the end game. They wanted those kind of people using the resource because it's a finite resource.
But here's the problem.
Yeah.
We all own the ocean.
Absolutely.
I own the ocean as much as you do or anybody else, and you as well as everybody else.
Right.
This is your office.
Right.
I get that.
Right.
How do you tell somebody who's coming from wherever that wants to fish and all of a sudden you say, well, this is, you know, we're all commercial fishermen here. This is how we make our living. You're not allowed to fish.
Well, that's not what we're saying. That's not how they did it. You're still allowed to go and catch whatever you want. You're just not allowed to sell your fish.
Oh, okay. So you're talking about the commercial entity.
Yeah. So what I'm saying
well,
is...
what about the fun fly fishermen that have so many skiffs and now you're talking about the flats are overrun by guides? How do you monitor that?
No, what I'm saying is you could still do it. But there's going to come a time where we're going to have to get a number that's going to work for both sides. I mean, both sides have to be even. You can't tell a recreational guy he can't go out there if you can. Okay? But if there's only going to be 2 fishing guides that do it for a living on, you know, just on a spot,
sure,
there should be 2 recreational guys that could do it as well. I mean, a level playing field for both. I'm not saying do away with the rec guys. I'm saying, you know, we're going to have to reduce the numbers. We can't keep using the flats the way we're using them. There's too many people.
No, I completely agree.
But as far as getting the recreational guys and getting them out of the way, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying a level playing field, but less people. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we could ever do that.
Well, I always try to relate it to, you know, the Western elk hunting, where you have to draw a tag in order to hunt.
Right.
Maybe there's a lottery system where everybody has to apply to fish. I mean, I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. that's so far out there, Andy, that I don't.
But I think you're thinking in the right direction, where that's one way to monitor the pressure, because these fish are not dying. They just don't want to be near the shoreline because of the pressure.
Absolutely. I mean,
but also too, you have the jet skis in Key West and all the big, all these other boats that are around.
Right.
Anyway, that's just food for thought.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate, all this stuff.
Yep.
Anything else?
Nope. That's it.
You the man.
That's it. I really enjoyed it, Andy.
You the man.
Okay? You're still sharp as a tack.
If
Nicky tells you you're not, that's bullshit. Okay?
All right, Nicky. He's on my side.
He's sharp as a tack, bro. He's okay.
I still can't hear and I can't see and I can't walk. Other than that, I'm sure. I'll take it. I love you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
All right.
When I saw it's West Side Story, when I saw it's just a